Silva, who's here, for her work. Look, I'm glad to have a chance to stand in for Hillary today. She did it for me for a long time. It's about time I showed up and did it for her. But I just talked to her. She's feeling great, and I think she'll be back out there tomorrow. So it's a crazy time we live in, when people think there's something unusual about getting the flu. Last time I checked, millions of people were getting it every year. But I thank you. Nevada is a battleground state, right? Always has been. You voted for me twice, and I thank you. It worked out pretty well for you. You voted for the president. That worked out pretty well for you. And just a couple of days ago, we had the quarterly report on what happened to income. And year over year, we've had, for the first time since 2007, an increase in incomes of over 5%. Real dollars after inflation that applies to everybody, from the lowest income working people all the way to the top. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. The economy works better when Democrats are there. We got lots of evidence of that. And even a Republican who is highly respected economic analyst, Mark Zandi, who worked for Senator John McCain in 2008, analyzed Hillary's economic plan and her opponent's economic plan. And he said, if her plan is implemented, it will create at least 10.4 million more jobs than the economy would otherwise produce. Now, let me just say something. The only reason wages are going up now is the labor market's getting a little tighter, and it's going to make the work you do here at this community college more and more important, so you can get out good middle-class jobs with some security, some stability, and the promise of a better future here. This is a big deal. Then he said, and keep in mind, this guy was McCain's advisor, not Obama. He said that Hillary's opponent's plan, if enacted as proposed, to have massive tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires one more time. They just can't let go of that trickle-down economics. It can't fail enough for them. The economy would produce 3.4 million jobs less than it would otherwise. In other words, economically, we'd be better off with no president at all. So when her opponent says, hey, vote for me, what do you got to lose? You say, well, for starters, 14 million jobs. No, thank you. I don't think we'll lose those jobs. We will claim them by voting for Hillary for president. And now this economic issue, and let me just run through it here. The main components of her plans are, first of all, get off the dime while interest rates are still lower than inflation, and pass a massive infrastructure program so that American jobs can be created repairing roads and bridges and airports and seaports and rail lines and water lines in cities where kids have elevated lead levels in their blood. And providing affordable, rapid broadband in every community in America, including on Native American reservations and in remote rural areas and in poor urban areas. If we did that, it would create unbelievable numbers of jobs. Second, she wants to make it easier to start a small business, easier to get a small business loan, and less costly to operate in the early years. The banking laws that were passed after the crash did a lot to make sure Wall Street can't crash Main Street again. But the aftermath of it meant that too few banks were even making loans to small businesses, to start small businesses. This is supposed to be Millennial Week in America. I saw a survey the other day that said more than 60% of millennials would like to have the chance to start their own business. You can't do it if you can't get credit at the bank. And the two biggest obstacles are accumulated student debt, which she proposes to fix by allowing people who start small business to pay their debt back, all people, as a small fixed percentage of their monthly income for up to 20 years, and by saying if you get a small business loan and you start, your debt payment will be canceled for 3 years while you get the business up and running. That's a big deal. But we also have to relax the banking rules because too many places won't give you a small business loan and you can put up real estate as collateral. And a lot of people, especially younger borrowers, can't do that. That's 2/3 of our new businesses. She's got a plan to bring manufacturing back to America, smart manufacturing, and a plan to put 500 million solar panels up all across this country to lower power bills, fight climate change, and go forward. Now, next big thing we got to do is to pass a sensible immigration reform bill. Look, and you just got to decide what you think about this, but this is not just an issue for a place like Nevada with a lot of Latinos and a lot of Asians now, a lot of people from other places. This is in the county where Hillary and I live, north of New York, we have a huge immigrant population. Our unemployment rate is under 5%. The deli in our little hometown belongs to a German family. Guy whose family came over here from Germany. He's one of the few people I know now who's older than I am. But anyway, but his employees are mostly Dominican and Ecuadorian. And there are a couple of Polish guys in there. And they all work together. And the place would not function if they didn't all work together. So we need immigration reform. Most of the people who are making the most extreme statements against immigration as a problem for the economy live in areas where there aren't many immigrants. Have you noticed that? That is, there are people who are frustrated by the economic circumstances and they need somebody to blame. All I can tell you is the worst thing we could do is to try to break up 11 million people and send them home. And it cost $100 billion by the time we got it done. And we ought to invest in things. And the worst thing we could do is spend that kind of money on a wall. It'd be better spent on bridges and roads and ports and airports. We need immigration reform. Then we need to reward people who are willing to help others train for these jobs. For example, Hillary wants to raise taxes on big corporations if they shut down and leave America. But if they spend more money, wait a minute, they spend more money to train their own people, give them internships, help them go to schools like this one, and sharing their profits, she wants to lower their taxes because they're helping us to rise together. In other words, we should help people. The biggest problem we've got now with income inequality in America is that too many corporations are run by people who are, they call them activist shareholders now. They used to call them raiders. And they pay the top managers based on what the stock is after they hold it a year and a day. In other words, they want to sell a stock. And so they squeeze them to do everything, buy back stock, do all this stuff to drive the stock price up in a day. And the bonus that a lot of the CEOs get is tied to this. It's the nuttiest thing I ever heard. Family-owned corporations who share profits with their employees, who invest long-term in research and development and productivity and training, make a lot more money over the long run. Guess what? All that old-fashioned stuff is true. If you invest, you get a return. If you just speculate, and take all the money for yourself, good things don't happen. So Hillary wants to reward long-term investment, profit sharing, training, support for programs like yours, investment in research and development, so that we'll have a healthy economy over the long run. And get people who are making a killing in a year and a day, holding down wages, holding down research and development, hurting their customers almost as much as their employees over the long run. They should pay more, so that together we can build an economy. Now, if you did that, we are very close to being able to grow together again. That's what this last quarterly economic report said. I saw a lot of you nodding. You saw it, didn't you? First time in almost a decade when we're starting to rise. And we need to put the pedal to the metal. We don't need to reverse it and go back to trickle-down economics. I worked hard to get rid of it, and we had a good result. You had 3 surpluses. I left my successor a surplus budget. You had 22.7 million new jobs. President Obama came in, saved us from the Depression, right? Saved the auto industry. And now, you know, we're running Hillary and Tim Kaine against a ticket that said, against a ticket that says wages are too high. We ought to lower the minimum wage, not raise it. He said in Detroit, you know, the car companies, he just didn't understand why they didn't just move away from Michigan to lower wage places. His opponent was in Congress and voted against saving the automobile industry. I mean, you got a clear choice here. You should now understand why there's so much name calling in this race. God forbid you should look at the real choices and figure out how it affects you. This election's about you, your future, our children, our grandchildren, our country. We are just this close to being able to rise together again. And so you have a chance to vote for the only person with a credible economic plan, the only person who really believes in social inclusion, that we need immigration reform, we need to live together, we need to protect women's rights, labor rights, LGBT rights. We need to learn to live together. We're the most diverse, youngest democracy in the world. That's our big meal ticket to the future. We need to get over all these crazy divisions and go into the future together. That's Hillary's position. That's what stronger together means. And so she's running against a guy that thought even any Muslims were targets, even if they were the parents of a young man who gave his life for our country on the field of battle. And people support it as if it's normal behavior. I'm really proud of the fact that when I was president, I worked with Senator Tom Harkin, who had a brother who was deaf all his life, to advance disability rights. And we changed the Medicaid law so that a person with a disability could go to work and not lose his Medicaid, so the employer didn't have to be afraid of embracing huge medical costs. The taxpayers won. You're going to spend that money anyway. Now you got somebody out there earning a living. And I believe that I've had people who couldn't see, couldn't walk, had all kinds of disabilities who worked for me for decades, and so has Hillary. And we just focused on their abilities, and you know what? Amazing things happen. And so her opponent made fun of that reporter with a physical disability, mimicked the fact that he couldn't control his arm movements, made fun of Senator John McCain, said he was a loser because he was shot down. I stood in that cell in Hanoi where he spent all those years, where they operated on him and didn't sew him up for a while. I don't understand how we have come to the point in America where we think it's so bad that we should all behave that way toward anybody that disagrees with us. And that's a big part of what's going on in this election. Now, I do understand the reasons for it. 80% of the people in this country hadn't had a pay raise since the crash. And the crash had a very long tail. And that breeds anger. If you get up every day and you look in the mirror and you think every one of my tomorrows is going to be like yesterday, it makes you crazy. You think you can't make your kids' future better? It makes you crazy. I get this. So when Hillary's opponent says, I want to make America great again, let me tell you, you have to be a certain age, and it helps to be a white Southern man. I know what that means. Look at you laughing. You know what it means. I know what that means. That means I will give you the economy you had 50 years ago. Everything will be hunky-dory. You just got to let me get elected and beat up on people for you. And I will move you back up on the social totem pole. Well, let me tell you something. First of all, getting the economy we had 50 years ago, I just turned 70. It's like me saying I'd like to be 20. I would, actually. Not because I want to claim an unfair number of years, but because I want to see what happens. If we do the right things, folks, I don't care about all the junk you've been put through in this election. We are just this close to being able to rise together again, to create a new pair of prosperity and discovery and advancement. But you got to pick the right leader. You've got to pick the right leader. So I'd like it if somebody says, I'll make you 20 again, but I wouldn't vote for him for president. And then I'll move you back up on the social totem pole. Let me tell you something. I'm old enough to know this. 50 years ago, it wasn't so great for African Americans, for Latinos, for first-generation immigrants. Gay people were afraid to come out and admit who they were. This was what Hillary wants to do is to tear the totem pole down and let us all go forward together. Look, that's what this whole election's about. We're going to rise together economically. We're going to live together socially. We're going to govern together. Another big issue in this election is who gets to name the next justice of the Supreme Court. Do you want to protect voting rights, women's rights, labor rights, immigrant rights, LGBT rights? Do you want us to live together or not? You just got to decide. You know, I'm old enough to remember seeing African Americans who couldn't vote, and then in my state, there was a poll tax. I'm still old enough to remember seeing people herding onto flatbed trucks and people unrolling the poll tax and giving it to African Americans, and then having somebody inside the polling place check and see how they voted. You know, and when all these people started all these voter ID deals and trying to make it harder for people to vote, I was livid. And I was so happy when that North Carolina law was overturned the other day. Did you see that? It went down. Yes, God, yes. But we're living in a world where it seems like so much is not on the level. They say, all we want is honest elections. You see John Oliver, the comedian, still on this? So there's a guy that actually researches credible claims of voting fraud by ID. Since 2000, more than 800 million of us have voted, or there have been more than 800 million votes cast in 4 presidential elections and the midterms. There have been a grand total of 35 credible claims of ID fraud. Quick math, I think that's about 1 in every 23 plus million. That ain't what has driven all these voter restrictions. We got to live together. You just have to decide. If you think the future of America is bleak, if you think we're losers, if you think the military is a disaster, if you think it's a good thing to ridicule all those people, you think it's okay to make unlawful contributions out of your personal family foundation and then attack my foundation It saves millions of lives. In my personal foundation, we have put millions of dollars into it. If you think that's okay, boy, he's your guy. Now we know, after all the hullabaloo over this email deal, you know, it was for a year we were told this is the biggest problem since the end of World War II. Right? Oh. Finally, the Washington Post, their everlasting credit, said, I think we've had about enough of this. And we know that what Hillary said about talking to Secretary Powell about it was true. Finally, can you believe it? They waited so long, they released that email. And we know that Secretary Rice didn't do emails, smart girl, but her senior aides did on personal devices, and we know that Secretary Kerry did until the law changed. How come you only heard about Hillary? Well, for one thing, when everybody else asked for disclosure, she disclosed. If a Martian came down from outer space, they might have a hard time thinking that that was a good idea, given see what happened. Where our opponent never discloses anything, but you know, once in a while you can pick it up. My point is, now we know that essentially what happened was what happened. She said, I shouldn't have done that. Now you can't do it. You got to be on a public email. She knows, we know apparently there was no hacking of her information, though the State Departments were hacked. And we know that other people did the same thing. And that's why all these four-star generals and admirals and the vast majority of the Republicans who have endorsed her have been done it for national security reasons. So you know they're quite familiar with all this, because most of these national security, the Republicans endorsed her, are people who spend their lives trying to keep us safe. That ought to be a bipartisan issue, wouldn't you think? So would they have endorsed her? No. But it saves the trouble if you make it about all this stuff. It saves people the trouble of thinking, and it taps into the road rage. How many of you were raised as children with your mama telling you, do not ever make a decision when you're mad, you'll make a mistake? Right? This is about road rage. Please don't think. Choose anger, not answers. Choose resentment, not responsibility and empowerment. Choose walls, not bridges. Well, that's the choice you got. When you cut right down the chase, that's the choice you got. I think you should choose answers, not anger. I think you should choose empowerment and responsibility over resentment. And I think you should choose bridges over walls. I think you should put America back in the tomorrow business. And the reason Hillary should be president, as President Obama said, for this moment, she's better qualified than he or I was when we took office. Better qualified. Why? Why is that? Because she's the only person with an actual lifetime record of doing things for other people. And it probably explains why she's been so viciously attacked by her opponent and his surrogates, who many of them were even around when I was president. You know, gosh, these people accused me of murder. You wouldn't believe what they did. And now they're right at the center of the campaign, just attack. Because we can't let people think. Because if they think, they'll think, I wonder what would be better for my family and for my kids and grandkids, and that's not a close call. We can't let people think about who has lived a life of service to others, and they see Hillary getting out of Yale Law School in 1973, which is a long time ago, and giving up the big bucks and going to work for the Children's Defense Fund to get African-American kids out of adult jails, to stop segregated academies from claiming illegal tax exemptions, to reform the foster care system. I see her going to Arkansas and helping people who are now supposed to be the heart of her opponent's base. She gave them access to legal services for the first time in the Arkansas Ozarks in northwest Arkansas. And we understand why they're mad. None of us have done enough to help coal country build a new economy. They ought to be mad at everybody. but promise them 50 years ago won't get the job done. She was I'm really proud of this. She basically was the first candidate to propose a serious proposal to get areas that are left out and left behind back in the economic mainstream. Extra incentives for people to invest in those places. Extra development money. Under a proposal by Congressman James Clyburn from South Carolina for urban, small town, and rural areas that have been too poor too long, they should get a fixed percentage of the federal development money so we guarantee that we can rise together. She did that, and then she sent me in the primary down there to those places. They voted for me. They wouldn't today, though, because they're into their anger now. They won't even admit, some of them, that they got health care under the health care law. Because they're mad. I understand why they're mad. I get it. They've sacrificed a long time. So I went down there and I said, look, Hillary sent me here to tell you, if you want to vote to make America great like it was 50 years ago, have at it. Do it. But if she wins, she's coming back for you because we all deserve a chance to be on that escalator to the 21st century and rise together. And I thought, I really can't remember a time when a candidate for president made that kind of outreach to people who were so violently opposed to her and buying things. I can't remember that. What is it? What? I'm sorry, you're interrupting my speech. If you want to come up here afterward, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. And besides, I'm hard of hearing, so I'll never be able to hear what you said. But look, you just got to decide. The first thing is, do you believe that we can grow rapidly and grow together again? You have to decide. Do you believe that? Do you believe it matters what decisions a president makes? Do you believe it matters who the president appoints to the Supreme Court? Do you believe it matters whether the president has ever had a record of convincing Republicans to vote with her on things? Do you believe that matters? Do you believe it matters whether you elect a president who has a record of standing and understanding in the world that shows she can keep us safe and give us the space we need to grow? Look, I almost fell out of my chair a couple of weeks ago, when the Dallas Morning News, for the first time since World War II, endorsed a Democrat for president, and they endorsed Hillary. But that's all these things you have to decide. I'm saving these 2 points to the end because they illustrate cooperation. One of the most important things that happened in the run-up to the Democratic Convention was that Senator Sanders and Hillary got together and published a joint plan to make college available to everybody. And I want to tell you what it is. She mentioned a little bit of it. And it was better than either one of them had before. They agreed. That's the point I want to make. That's what works. When people get together, put their eyes together, and work together, and try to build people up instead of tear people down. That's what works. So, Senator Sanders and Hillary agreed on the platform. Then Hillary got up and gave her speech and accepted the platform. It says, free tuition for everybody at a public school, at a historically black college or university, or at any other school that takes first-generation immigrants or other low-income working people without regard to their race, with a reasonable tuition and a high graduation rate, free tuition up to $125,000 of family income. That's 88% of the people in school in Nevada. Man. Then, debt-free graduation for everybody else. You can get out owing no money if you're willing to do some work study and other things. Then, lots more money for people who are in job training programs and 2-year programs that guarantee a good long-term job. And finally, a real meaningful debt relief program for people who've already accumulated debt. You heard me say, if you want to get a small business loan, under her plan, your obligation to pay on it would be suspended for 3 years if you get the loans, so you can start the business. But she would also limit how much you could be required to pay to 10% of your after-tax income. And if you don't pay it off, like a lot of people in medical school, over $200,000. If you don't pay it off in 20 years, you get to write it off. If you're willing to do a few years of public service work, you can get rid of it earlier. If you do a public service job and you're just paying your loan off, yours will be forgiven in 10 years, not 20. And so, look, I realize every time I do an interview, I realize all this stuff is so boring to the people who want to talk to me about the campaign. They want to talk to me about the last mean thing somebody said about Hillary and the mean thing they said about me, and surely I'll say something mean about them. And so you basically have this constant state of feeding the anxiety and anger that is out there. We don't need to feed our road rage. We need to slow the car down and think about our common future. And there's a lot of people here with the League of Conservation Voters t-shirts on. I thank you for being here. Look, one of the most challenging things we face is how to deal with this climate change thing in a way that helps our economy and makes it sustainable, doesn't cost jobs. There was a chilling report a couple of days ago saying that 90% of all the carbon that's been absorbed on Earth in the last century or so has gone into our oceans. It's making fishing scarce in some places. Fish are the source of protein for 1 billion people on Earth. And if it was all released, we'd frankly have to go underground to live. You know, so you can vote for Hillary who wants to do something about it, or you can vote for her opponent who says it's a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese to take our jobs away. Now, we're all laughing. But if you got enough road rage, your guy can say anything about other people. What the heck? The world disrespects me every day when I look in the mirror. So just call anybody anything you want. Here's what I know. I spent half my life now trying to help other people get a job, start a business, keep a farm going. Half my life trying to help people educate their kids and improve their prospects for the future. I did it as a governor for 12 years, as your president for 8 years, running this foundation all over the world for 15 years. Here's what I know. Here's what I know. You can win elections on hope, or you can win them on fear. You can win them on genuine affection and belief that our common humanity is more important than our interesting differences, or you can win it on hatred. I see these wonderful signs at a lot of Hillary's rallies that say love Trump's hate. It does sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. Right? Sometimes it doesn't. But what works is the spirit that was embodied by that unbelievable police chief in Dallas after those police officers were murdered, by that deranged young person who picked the one police department he could within 1,000 miles, has probably done the best job of relating to the community without regard to race or income. With a chief whose own son lost his life mentally ill in an encounter with the police. You just got to decide. Are you going to be a pawn in a game played by people who are just looking for tomorrow's story or this deal or that deal? Are you going to be the people who run this country, who chart your future? You know, half stuff you see every night, just game, right? Back and forth, and who's up and who's down. The election's about you. It's the one day of the year you get to be the boss. Right? It's about you. And in Nevada, you got such good early voting from October the 22nd to November 4th, I think. 4 years ago, 2/3 of you voted in advance. You have until October 8th to register by mail and until the 18th to register online or in person. It's you. It's your country. Here's what I know. I spent half my life doing this. And I've been reasonably successful doing it for other people. You ought to, first of all, elect somebody with a record of serving other people. You ought to, secondly, elect someone with a plan with a reasonable chance of producing more job growth and higher incomes and less inequality and more upward mobility. One that will save the planet and allow us all to live together. And there's only one person you can vote for that meets that. But there's a lot of road rage out there. So as you walk out the door, this is what I want to say. This is one state that everybody predicts to be close because it always has been. And you can make the difference. If you know somebody that's not registered, get them registered. Get everybody you can to vote in advance. But more important, don't treat them the way he's treated us, or the way he's treated the Khans, or the way he treated John McCain, or the way he's demeaned the military, or the way all this other stuff. Don't do that. Reach out to them and say, you know what works best all over the world is when people get together and work together and figure out what the heck they're going to do. You're going to get up tomorrow morning. I'm going to get up tomorrow morning, God willing. And we're going to face this future. And if we face it together and work together, the chances that something good will happen are way better. Now, that's just it. So that slogan of Hillary's is not a slogan for her, Stronger Together. It's a way of life. It was when I first found her and she was working on legal services and children's issues. It was when she got beat on health care in the White House and went back and helped to pass the Children's Health Insurance Program, 8 million kids under it now. It was on the day after the tragedy of 9/11 when we first gave thanks that our daughter was okay because she was down in the area. And as a senator from New York, she went to work on what may still be, to her, the most important public responsibility she ever discharged, to try to help us begin again. It was as Secretary of State when she flew overnight to Egypt to broker a ceasefire in what was about to become a shooting war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. It's always been her life. She'll be a fabulous president. What president? And I want to ask you, could you get up and carry on under all the assaults she's been under, knowing that a bunch of it's not on the level, and time after time after time for over 20 years, the records come out and say, oh, well, that was right what she said. And then all the people who are attacking you just kind of forget to tell the people that. Okay, let's go on to something else. Next target. I'm telling you, she's the best change maker I've ever known. And if you do this, I want you to go out and, I just try to talk to people. I'm not a very good speech maker anymore. I want you to go talk to people. No, listen. Go talk to people. And tell them that Stronger Together beats the living daylights out of driving a stake through the heart of our common future and our common humanity. Go out there and win this election for yourselves, your children, your grandchildren, and everything that America can become. God bless you.
Okay, everybody, that was a live rally there in Vegas.